All right, let's change focus and go to this conversation now. On this day in 1992, 45 lives were lost in the Boipatong Massacre. They were attacked by a group of armed men. Now, this massacre was one of the bloodiest and brutal moments in South Africa's history pre-1994. And over the years, some of the family members of the victims have expressed how they feel forgotten as well as neglected. Let's speak now to activist Narius Moloto, who joins us live now. Thank you so much, Mr. Moloto, for your time. I mean, your reflections on this day.
Yeah, this is one of the saddest days in the history of our country, particularly because the young people, the family, innocent people who were sleeping in the squatter camps were murdered in a very brutal manner by armed gangs. At that time, and it has been confirmed, were members of the Inkatha Freedom Party. Later in the Truth Commission, that came quite clear that those people were actually admitted to have carried out those attacks and operations. Yes, for that it is a sad day, particularly because the families and the relatives of these murdered people were not looked after. So it was something that, or it is something that as a country, we do not seem to be taking care of or pay attention to the victims of these massacres who were clearly an organized crime.
And how can that be done better, especially when it comes, to looking after the families? For example, last year, the SABC visiting the area and spoke to some of the families. They told our reporter Kenny Mapanga at the time that they feel forgotten and that the memorial site, for example, is also not being maintained. So how then does the country begin to take care of them?
Look, first we must recognize the history and the main the main landmarks of which led to our democracy. The incident that happened, the brutality of innocent people, I think they form part of the painful side of our history leading to our democracy. Now, the families need to be acknowledged, the contribution need to be acknowledged. Now, as a result, we believe that statues and remembrance need to be there so that the future generations can know exactly what has happened. We shouldn't be seen to be throwing these things under the carpet and seek to forget our history, because history tends to repeat itself at some stage. So it is important that we record it. Those who are not born and those who were not there, who were born later, they must know exactly what has happened. The best side. We do not only have the bright side of our history, we also have the dark side, and it needs to be recorded because it offers great lessons for the future generations.
And when you speak about recording, there's, often sometimes in some instances contention, with others who say that it all depends on how you remember what happened. So how then do we begin as a country to ensure that these moments are recorded accurately and also preserved for future generations, as you say?
Yes, we do have government departments specifically tasked to take care of the history, to ensure that the history is properly recorded and is stored properly where it's supposed to be stored. So that department, I think, is the high time that they need to begin to record these and many other massacres that took place leading to our democracy in 1994.
So when it comes then to, some of what we talk about tonight around the families, and in your view as well, would you say that the process of the healing of the wounds has begun, or because they feel neglected and forgotten, that process is still being delayed?
The process is still being delayed because it needs to be openly, transparently carried out. It needs to be known. We need, as a nation and people, as a country, to acknowledge. In acknowledging, we need to begin to have the necessary ceremonies, the necessary functions, the necessary activities, which the entire country is beginning to acknowledge that our history has this side, this suffering of the people, because they just became victims. But in that process, the you'll also remember that it has led to the suspension of Codesa 1, and it led to the reorganization of Codesa 2, which has made progress. In 2 years, there was an elections. So for that reason, it has its own contribution, it has its own significance, and this must be properly recorded and must be acknowledged. So we need to, as a country and as people, begin within our relevant departments, make sure that we do justice and we are fair to our history, because our history, we can't change it. It is there. We need to acknowledge so that we can move on and being proud people. And those who feel neglected, they can also begin to realize that whatever happened to them in our way to democracy is being acknowledged and recorded.
You speak about, the importance of history. You speak about recording and also preserving it and ensuring that, it is saved and also told in totality to future generations. What risks, in your view, as an activist, lie ahead if we do not do this?
If we do not do this, we intend to, we need to carry the spirit of nationhood. As we are rebuilding ourselves as a nation is in totality inclusive of its own history. So if we disregard history, each generation that emerges thinks that everything that they found has only started there. They think that history or the future has only the bright side, has only what is there. It also leaving out a very important side, the sacrifices and the pain that our people have had. Once you try to sideline the history, and particularly the best side of history, the most likely the future generation are likely to begin to want to disregard or to not to consolidate properly, not to know exactly where they are coming from, and they are most likely not know where they are going, because they wouldn't understand their position to find themselves where they are, where they came from, and where they are likely to go. What are the things that they need to avoid so that they do not necessarily go there? For instance, we have the Guamdala hostel. It has its own position in history due to the suffering that some of the residents that came there harassed the communities around them. Now, if those are not recorded, the history of the hostels, for instance, would not, and the positive and the negative side of the hostels may not be known to the future generations.
All right. Thank you so much for your reflections tonight. Do appreciate them. That was Narius Moloto.